Title: California police responded to the same apartment for years. The calls never stopped. Before we begin, take a moment to subscribe, like this video, and leave a comment, because what you're about to hear is not an urban legend, not an internet rumor, and not fiction. This is a real series of police responses connected to a single apartment building in California, where the same disturbing call was reported repeatedly, without any official explanation ever being recorded. The apartment complex is located in Los Angeles County. It is not abandoned, isolated, or hidden. Families live there. Students rent units there. People come home after long shifts expecting quiet and sleep. From the outside, nothing looks unusual. Beige exterior walls, outdoor hallways, a modest parking lot, and streetlights that cast dull pools of light across the pavement. The first police call from this address was logged in late 2017. The caller reported hearing footsteps outside their apartment door shortly after 3 in the morning. According to the call log, the footsteps were slow and deliberate, moving down the hallway before stopping directly in front of the door. The caller said they could hear breathing on the other side. When they opened the door, the hallway was empty. Officers arrived within minutes. Their body camera footage shows a silent hallway, closed doors, and no visible sign of forced entry. The stairwell was checked. The parking lot was searched. No one was found. The incident was documented as an unfounded disturbance. 2 weeks later, another call came in from the same building. This time, the caller lived in a different unit. The description was nearly identical. Footsteps in the hallway. A presence outside the door. Complete silence the moment the door was opened. Again, police responded. Again, nothing was found. Over the following months, the calls continued. Sometimes residents reported knocking, sometimes pacing, sometimes a shadow appearing beneath the door. But one detail appeared again and again in the written reports. The sounds always stopped the moment the resident tried to confirm what was happening. By early 2018, officers had responded to the building multiple times. Body camera footage from different nights looks almost identical. Long empty hallways. Dim overhead lighting. Confused residents standing barefoot in doorways, visibly shaken, insisting someone had been there moments earlier. The calls occurred almost exclusively between 2:30 and 4 in the morning. One resident, a nursing assistant named Melissa Grant, told police she stopped sleeping normally. She said the footsteps felt intentional, as if whoever was outside her door knew when she was awake. After 3 months, she broke her lease and moved out without giving notice. Property management records later showed an unusual increase in early move-outs during that period. Tenants cited disturbances and feeling unsafe, but there were no reports of theft, vandalism, or forced entry. Security cameras covering the hallways showed nothing during the reported times. Maintenance inspections were conducted. Pipes were checked. Air vents were examined. Animals were ruled out. No mechanical explanation matched the timing or consistency described by the callers. By mid-2019, officers were familiar with the address. Dispatch logs show brief comments questioning whether the calls were connected. One officer suggested the building itself might be generating false alarms. Another noted that every caller sounded genuinely frightened. Then the incidents escalated. One resident reported hearing whispering outside the door. The words were unclear, but the voice was close enough to be unmistakable. Another reported the door handle turning slowly, once, before stopping. When officers arrived, the handle was still warm. There was no sign of forced entry. No fingerprints. No suspect. The building remained occupied. And the calls continued. By the beginning of 2020, the apartment building had quietly gained a reputation among local patrol officers. It was never officially labeled as problematic, but dispatch notes showed hesitation whenever calls came from that address during overnight hours. Officers had been there too many times, always for the same reason, and always with the same result. Nothing. Body camera footage from multiple responses shows the same sequence repeating. Officers arrive, walk the exterior perimeter, then move through the interior hallways. Doors remain closed. Lights hum overhead. No voices are heard. No footsteps are recorded. Yet each time, the residents insist the disturbance had been happening moments earlier. What unsettled investigators was how consistent the reports were. Different callers. Different apartments. Same floor. Same time window. Almost every call occurred between 2:30 and 4 in the morning. One resident, Carlos Ramirez, moved into the building in early 2019. According to his statement, he had no prior knowledge of the earlier incidents. On his third night in the apartment, he reported hearing someone walking slowly down the hallway. The steps stopped outside his door. Carlos said he froze in place, listening. After several seconds, the sound faded away. He did not open the door. The next night, it happened again. Same time. Same pattern. Carlos said it felt deliberate, as if whoever was outside knew exactly where he lived. After a week, the sounds stopped completely. He moved out 2 days later. Another tenant, Angela Morris, reported hearing rapid footsteps followed by silence. She described the sound as someone running, then stopping abruptly. When she checked the hallway, the lights flickered, but no one was there. Security footage reviewed by police showed no movement. Investigators searched for practical explanations. Maintenance records were reviewed. Pipes were inspected. Airflow was tested. Rodents were ruled out. The building had no history of structural damage that could explain repeated noises at specific times. The security system was examined next. Cameras covered the exterior entrances and several interior hallways. Timestamps matched the reported incidents, but the footage showed empty corridors. No shadows. No movement. No equipment malfunction. In one case, police arrived while the resident was still on the phone with dispatch. The caller could be heard whispering, insisting the footsteps were happening at that exact moment. Officers entered the hallway immediately. It was silent. One officer later noted in the report that the silence felt unnatural, not calm. He crossed it out before submitting the final version. As 2020 progressed, fewer residents called police. Not because the disturbances stopped, but because people began to doubt whether calling made any difference. Several tenants reported feeling embarrassed after officers found nothing. Others feared being labeled unstable. Despite fewer calls, property management continued receiving complaints. Tenants described anxiety, sleep deprivation, and an overwhelming sense of being watched. Some refused to walk the hallways at night. Others requested transfers to different floors. The disturbances appeared concentrated on one specific section of the building. Always the same hallway. Always the same end. In late 2020, a final series of calls came in over a 2-week period. The callers described knocking that moved slowly from door to door, as if someone was testing each apartment. One caller said the knocking stopped directly outside their unit and remained there. Police arrived within 4 minutes. The hallway was empty. After that night, the calls stopped completely. No explanation was recorded. No resolution was offered. The case was never officially closed because it was never officially opened. The building remains occupied today. And no one has been able to explain why the disturbances began, why they followed such a precise pattern, or why they suddenly ended. Officially, there is no case file tied to the apartment building. No crime was committed. No suspect was identified. No evidence was collected. What exists instead are scattered police call logs, body camera recordings showing empty hallways, and statements from residents who all described the same experience in different words. For law enforcement, that made the situation difficult to classify. Without physical evidence or a visible threat, the incidents remained categorized as disturbances. Each response was handled individually. There was no formal investigation connecting them. But for the people who lived there, the experience was not isolated. Former tenants interviewed years later described long-lasting effects. Many said they developed sleep problems that followed them into new homes. Some admitted they still avoided apartment buildings entirely. Others said they could no longer tolerate silence in hallways, especially late at night. One former resident said the most unsettling part was not the noise itself, but the feeling that it was intentional. She said it never sounded random. It never sounded accidental. It always felt directed. Another former tenant recalled standing in her kitchen at 3 in the morning, holding her phone, debating whether to call the police again. She said she already knew what would happen. Officers would arrive. They would walk the hallway. They would find nothing. And she would be left alone with the same fear. Several officers who responded to the building declined to speak on record. Privately, one admitted the location made him uneasy. He said he had been to far worse calls, but none that felt as quietly wrong as that hallway. He could not explain why. There were no reports of violence, no break-ins, no thefts, nothing that would normally explain the level of fear described by the residents. That absence is what continues to trouble those who experienced it. When something happens without leaving a mark, it becomes harder to dismiss. In early 2021, the final call was logged. The caller reported slow knocking that moved down the hallway, stopping briefly at each door. The knocking stopped outside the caller's apartment and did not continue. Police arrived quickly. The hallway was empty. After that night, the disturbances ended. No gradual fade. No explanation. No closure. Property records show that tenants continued to move in and out as normal. The building was never evacuated. No warnings were issued. Life went on. Yet among former residents, the building is still discussed quietly, not as a haunted place, not as a mystery to solve, but as something they endured and never fully understood. Some believe the disturbances were caused by an individual who was never caught. Others believe it was a psychological phenomenon amplified by stress and shared environment. A few refuse to speculate at all. They say putting a name to it makes it feel closer. What remains consistent is how similar the experiences were. The timing, the location, the silence when someone looked. Whatever caused the disturbances did not want to be seen. And that may be the most unsettling detail of all. The building still stands. Its hallways still stretch the same length. Its lights still hum late at night. New tenants walk those corridors unaware of what once happened there. But for those who lived through it, the memory remains vivid. They remember standing on the other side of a closed door, listening to footsteps that stopped just inches away. They remember the moment of silence afterward, when nothing made sense. And they remember the feeling that whatever had been there was still close, even after the sound was gone. Some experiences do not need an explanation to leave a mark. They simply exist. And long after the calls stopped, long after the officers stopped responding, the question remains unanswered. What was walking those hallways?